When God speaks, when God calls, when God prompts, we have two choices in our life. We can either obey or we can be disobedient. And one of the best examples, at least that I resonate with, is from Paul in his life, where he was converted from a Pharisee to a Jesus follower basically overnight. In Acts chapter 26, he's giving an account to King Agrippa and goes through his story, his testimony of what happened and why he changed and why he's preaching and proclaiming the good news. He says in verse 19, he says, "So then, King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the vision from heaven." He goes on to say in verse 22 that God has helped him to this very day to help him proclaim the good news. And Paul is a perfect example of obedience, not knowing what was going to happen next, not knowing what his life was going to turn out to be. He just obeyed at the command of God, where he told him to go and preach the good news to the Gentiles and to the Jews and to everyone that would listen. And so Paul had a single focus and a single mind of spreading the good news, and his obedience led him to chains, it led him to prison, it led him to beatings, but it did not stop him. He had the faith and the courage to stand up and to step out, even though he was being persecuted and on trial for his faith. And I just wish, for me as my application, I want to have that faith. I want to have that courage, that obedience to follow God regardless of the outcomes that are going to happen in my life. Because I'd rather be obedient, in chains like Paul, than be disobedient and run out of fear. Because God is going to call us and ask us to do things that can seem scary and seem big, bigger than ourselves. And it just doesn't make sense, or we don't know what's going to happen next, or people may be against us. But I would rather obey. Because it's better for me to be obedient to the call and the will of God, because who am I to stand up to what God wants to do? If God has prompted me to go talk to this person, who am I to say no? If God has prompted me to go and lead this person to Jesus, why would I say no? Because he wants to partner with us and through us to make a difference here on this earth. But it is up to me, it is up to you to be obedient, despite the chains that'll happen, despite the persecutions, despite the setbacks, despite the people that get upset with you. It is better off for us to be obedient to the will of God and to the plan and to the partnership that he wants for us than to run in fear. And so often in my life, I run. I get afraid and I get discouraged. And I want to have the faith like Paul to stand up and say, God, I'm going to go where you've placed me to go. I'm going to say the things that you want me to say, because he will help us when he calls us. Because God calls, he equips the called. He doesn't call the equipped. He gives you what you need and the words to say and the people around you to help you. But it is up to us to be obedient. Because I'd rather be obedient in chains than be disobedient and miss out on what God is telling me to do. I hope that encourages you and, helps you guys to be more mindful of what God is prompting and calling you to do, that obedience is key rather